The big day has finally arrived. It's time to get the strings on. So I've got a bunch of things I need to do in order to make that happen. Tuners, I have to make the nut and the saddle. I've got the whole guitar buffed up to a nice shine. I'm happy with that. First thing I'm going to do is polish the fretboard with a little rotary tool and make the ebony nice and shiny, and also if there are any final scratches in the frets, this will take those scratches out. Now I'll clean up the fretboard binding, just a little light scraping to remove all of the dirt. The buffing certainly leaves a little bit of residue on the binding, but it doesn't take. I sanded the saddle blank so that it just barely fits in the slot. I mean, it's not a tight, squeezed in fit the way I've seen on Martin guitars, but it's not flopping around either. It's pretty snug. I'm using fossilized woolly mammoth ivory for the nut and saddle. I just thought it would add a nice touch, and of course no woolly mammoths were harmed in the making of this guitar. So now that I've got it fitting in the slot, I will trim it to the length of the saddle slot and then knock the height down to roughly where I think it needs to be in order to get a decent action. I will put the strings on and then do the final adjustments of the saddle height once the strings are in place. Here's the saddle roughed out to almost the height I want it to be. It's still a little tall, but as I said, I'll do the final adjustment when after the strings go on, and I know exactly how much more to take off. It has a 16-inch radius across the top, same as the fretboard. So that's all set for now, and I will turn my attention to the nut. I have the nut fitting in the slot with pretty much no clearance. The sides are tapered with the same flare out as the peg head has, so there won't be any irregularities there. The bottom side of the nut slot, the nut slot, is angled downward a little bit. You can see it doesn't go straight across here. It actually has a downward slope, the 12-degree pitch of the peg head. So I sanded the bottom of the nut to match that perfectly. And I've got it the length I want it to be. Well, width, I guess. So next thing is to take the excess material off the top, and then I can think about cutting in the slots for the strings. I use a couple of rulers, standard thickness and then a real thin one. Stick them right up against the nut, and then use a pen, and the rulers conform to the curvature of the fretboard, and give me a good indicator of where I want to cut or sand the nut blank so that it's not excessively tall. So you can see the the mark of the pen here. So I'm going to sand all of the above off and angle it backward, sloping down the peg head. Now I'll file all the nut slots with a series of files that are pretty close to the string gauges that will